Good morning. I request all to put your mobiles on silent mode, please. We begin this session with small music of the mother. Let us meditate for 2 minutes and then we will begin. Good morning once again. In India, we begin every program with the lighting of the lamp, and now I request Professor Sitaram Reddy, Sri V.V. Raghav Rao, Dr. Anand Reddy, Mrs. Radha Reddy, and Mrs. Dikshika Reddy to come forward and light the lamp.
वंदिता सिद्धगंधर्वै रचिता सुरदानवै पूजिता मुनिभिः सर्वैः ऋषिभिः स्तूयते सदा शारदा शारदाम्भोज वदना वदनाम्बुजे सर्वदा सर्वदास्माकं सन्निधिं सन्निधिं प्रिया सरस्वती मेचतामनमि वागधिष्ठात्री देवता देवत्यं परिपद्यन्ते यदनुग्रहतो जनाः ग्रावा मतिं न सरस्वती रागेतर परिच्छेद वचस्यैव करोति लक्ष्मीर्मेधा धरा पुष्टिर्गौरी तुष्टिः प्रभा पाहि तनुभिरष्टाभिर्मां सरस्वती सरस्वती सरस्वत्यै नमो नित्यं भद्रकाल्यै नमो वेद वेदांत वेदांग विद्यास्थानेभ्य एव च सरस्वती महाभागे विद्ये कमललोचने विद्यारूपे विश्वरूपिणी विशालाक्षी विद्यां देहि नमोऽस्तुते यदक्षरं पदं भ्रष्टं मात्राहीनं च यद्भवेत् तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देवी प्रसीद परमेश्वरी प्रसीद परमेश्वरी प्रसीद परमेश्वरी
Thank you, Dilip. Now with this mood set, we begin this as what we call offering. The mother has said, the only offering that truly enriches is the one made to the divine. With this sense, with this feeling, we offer this 2-day seminar to the mother and Sri Aurobindo, and also pay our gratitude and homage to the founder chairman of Institute of Human Study, Professor V. Madhusudan Reddy. To give a welcome address, I request the chairman, Professor Dr. Anand Reddy, to come and welcome all of you.
I think there's no doubt that after the wonderful music where we invoke the presence of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and the deeply felt invocation by Deepshika, there is the touch of the presence. And today personally I am extremely happy because I feel here the pulsating presence of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And it is my great privilege to welcome you all, not only to this seminar, but to this presence of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Because nowadays I feel it's become a rare thing in our country, in Bharat, in India, where we can get an exclusive seminar on Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So on this Golden Jubilee year, in this Golden Jubilee year of the Institute, I thought that we should have a seminar dedicated exclusively to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And not only that, my father himself was a great lover. He was passionate, in fact, to have seminars on Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. He has organized umpteen number of seminars, and I thought it is a befitting honor, tribute to my father Madhusudan Reddy, to organize one more seminar from the Institute of Human Study. Well, as I said, it's becoming more and more rare to go to a seminar in the country where we can speak of Sri Aurobindo exclusively. Of course, we can read out a paper on Sri Aurobindo, but there is hardly a meeting where Sri Aurobindo is invoked in totality. And that's why this time we decided to have the seminar exclusively on Sri Aurobindo, and that's why I called it 4 Aspects of Sri Aurobindo. There is no other theme but Sri Aurobindo. And we have selected out of his many aspects, because as all of you know, he is a multi-dimensional personality, the 4 major aspects known to the world. And we'll be listening to some stalwart speakers. And I'm happy they have graced the occasion, accepted to come for the invitation, have been forced to come, whatever you want to call. But we are going to have a wonderful session on these 4 aspects. One, of course, is the Sri Aurobindo as the yogi, Sri Aurobindo as the poet, Sri Aurobindo's vision of the future. And then we have a new title here, if you can see your card, Sri Aurobindo as a social activist. It is the title of the times, I must say, because environment and social activism is pretty much dominant now. So we thought of seeing how Sri Aurobindo can fit into this new title. And yesterday while we were discussing with some speakers, we heard that it is very difficult to understand Sri Aurobindo and hardly anyone reads him nowadays. It's true. There is in the universities hardly any paper, any subject, any book of Sri Aurobindo that is studied. There used to be a time when there were stalwart thinkers, philosophers, poets, literature, and Sri Aurobindo was still attempted at. But as the times are going by, I'm afraid it's a dwindling candle. 1 or 2 heroes are trying to keep up the lamp, keep alight the lamp. That's because, as I said, there seems to be a dearth of Aurobindonian speakers. There seems to be a dearth of really great thinkers in Sri Aurobindo's thought. And so, I do not really blame the students, but I blame the academia that one of the greatest thinkers of contemporary India is being neglected. Well, I can understand the reason why the academia and the students and the general public, they do not read Sri Aurobindo or want to read Sri Aurobindo, not only because they say he is very difficult, his language is difficult, his thought is difficult. But my understanding is, people don't read him because he demands from us an effort. Sri Aurobindo doesn't want to come down to your ordinary level, ordinary thinking and say, I'll give you sweetmeats or lollipops. In order to understand Sri Aurobindo, we have to make an effort. You see, people go for management and this company and that company for training for 6 months and all that. But nobody wants to spend some time to train one's own mind to reach Sri Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo on one side, on the level of thought, he has his Himalayan heights. And on the life level, he is like a grassroots level. That means he needs some basic changes in our consciousness. We have to go down to the basic consciousness of our mind and body. And he says we need to change our consciousness. And we are not ready neither to go to the Himalayan heights of thought, not to come down to the basic level of life where it demands change. So we are happy with the common religious terminology, the religious ceremonies and religious do's and don'ts, but there is no effort at all. You get up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you do that and then you think the day is done. But Sri Aurobindo would say no. We need to make an effort throughout the day. So such a demand on the human being is what is really keeping us away from Sri Aurobindo. So I can understand if people say difficult, he is not difficult because he has great heights, but he is difficult because we are not ready to put in effort to understand him. And yesterday a poet, you will hear him later, he has taken the trouble of translating Sri Aurobindo Savitri into Telugu. But even Telugu people don't read and don't understand. So it's not a question of language, it's a question of our wanting to approach Sri Aurobindo. Well, we'll talk about all that later, but the purpose of this seminar is to really tell you that yes, he is approachable. If only we can put in some effort and sincerity. You see, these times where people are used to this ready food, ready-made food, we do not want to take trouble. I was thinking, like the difference between eating a sugar cane and gulping down a sugar cube. Not many people would like to take a sugar cane. They say, why bother, why trouble, it's very hard. But sugar cube, yes, you can just gulp it down. But what is the difference? In the sugar cane you get the rasa of the sweetness. So similarly, if only we can read Sri Aurobindo in the original, you will get the rasa of this ananda. And I can challenge you, I can really assure you that read his original. And you will see it takes time to chew. But once you start chewing, the rasa of the joy, the thrill, the beauty, the ananda, you will be mesmerized, you will be lost. But a sugar cube is a sugar cube and it's not even good nowadays as it's told. However, even giving you the sugar cube in the beginning in these seminars is maybe a beginner. But to tell you Sri Aurobindo is sweet, he has a lovely, beautiful taste there, you can enjoy. So in this seminar, we propose to give you a few sugar cubes to give you the taste of this original Sri Aurobindo. I hope you will all enjoy this seminar today and tomorrow. And tomorrow, of course, is fully a day on Sri Aurobindo Darshan. And second half is dedicated to Professor Madhusudan Reddy, the tribute to him. So welcome all of you again, especially the speakers from outside the state and the speakers from Hyderabad. Thank you very much.
I hope we have got enthused into the spirit of the seminar to know a little about Sri Aurobindo and the Mother and to experience what is the rasa of his writings through our eminent speakers and scholars here. Moving on to the first event that we have today of book release and journal release, we will be having it one after the other. So that will be released. The first book release will be done by Professor Sitaram Reddy, the guest of honor we have today. Professor Sitaram Reddy, student and colleague of Professor V. Madhusudan Reddy, was working with the industry before he took a major turn in his life and took to philosophy. Inspired by Professor Reddy's thought, vision and work, he joined the Department of Philosophy as a student. Subsequently, he joined the department in Osmania University and became an inspiring professor. At the end of his career, he was a successful head of the department and fulfilled largely the work of Professor Madhusudan Reddy. He helped him in his endeavors to build the institute as well as the Sri Aurobindo International School. I request Sir to release the books. The books have been, is a collection of 5 volumes of Professor V. Madhusudan Reddy's 27 writings.
present this to the chairman of the Institute of Human Studies. First call.
Second one.
Let me just show you one of the books. The creative word, it is on the Veda and Savitri. The next step in individual and social development. Domains of light, the Upanishads and the life divine. And science, spirituality and culture. Two who are one, this is about Sri Aurobindo and another.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman. Happy birthday.
Chairman of the Institute of Human Studies, Dr. V. Anand Reddy, and Dr. Chalamani. Children of Professor V. Masudan Reddy, who have taken the responsibility of carrying out the work which he has initiated to greater heights. I feel it fortunate enough for me because the chairman of the Institute of Human Studies, Dr. Anand Reddy, has given me this opportunity of releasing those books which were written by not only my professor, he was philosopher, guider, and who enlightened me in many aspects of human existence. I am really indebted to Professor Masudan Reddy and to both of his children, Chairman of the Institute of Human Studies, Anand Reddy, and Chalamai. Now, this gives me an opportunity of how I got this opportunity. I feel it very proud. To release books of Professor Masudan Reddy is no small thing, no smaller aspect. It is a very pleasant duty to me to release his books. How fortunate I am. It is the fulfillment of my life endures. After all, getting this opportunity, I consider it the most privileged event in my 84 years of life. And it gives me great pleasure to present this to all of you, enlightened sadhaks, enlightened professors, and enlightened citizens of modern India. I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
The mind behind these books, the person who conceived these books and saw it through is definitely Professor V. Madhusudan Reddy's son, your own Anandaya. So I request sir to speak for a few minutes on the
Just give me one. Well, I'm not here to praise my father. Most of you know about him. But one side which very few know is that he has been a prolific writer. Many of you know perhaps him as a great orator. Although we know about his writing, very few have read him. That's why I say most of you do not know this aspect of my father. He has written about 21 to 25 books, edited and original. And It is all about Sri Aurobindo and the mother, that is based on them. And we thought that the best way to honor him is to revive his writings. We have, of course, recorded talks, but not too many. But it is the books that are there. And so most of them are out of print because they've been sold out. So instead of reprinting the same 25 volumes, I thought that it's best to have a selection of his works. So these are all selected works. In 5 volumes, we have brought together the best themes of the Vedas, Savitri, Upanishads, Life Divine, and Science, Spirituality and Culture, and of course Sri Aurobindo and Mother. So here in these volumes you get the essence of Bapu's vision, his writings, his capacity. And this work has been possible because I found a very able assistant in Shruti, like the one who is here, Shruti Vidvaika. And the institute, as the institute and me personally, we are very grateful to Shruti, who has taken indeed the trouble because she had to go through all the 25 volumes, not word by word, but at least she had to know the contents of each article. Then we selected together. Then of course we did the rest of the work, editing, proofreading, scanning, etc., etc. So I would like to acknowledge publicly our thanks to Shruti. And when we got this printed, these 5 volumes, the first thing I did, of course, you can all guess, I sent these copies to my Amma. And Amma was the first one to see this, apart from Saka. And she made wonderful observations which I think apply to all of us. One is that Anand, when he was alive, I hardly read his books. In fact, she reads my books, but she has not read Bapu's books. But then she says, on seeing these books, they're so wonderfully attractive. And the essence and the publication, the inside. She says, I'm so attracted now, I'll start reading your father's books now. If she can say that, I think many more should be able to say that. So I expect many of you to take up these books and read them. Because it's really a kind of a prelude to Sri Aurobindo's own books. He has given this substance and the essence of Sri Aurobindo's thought. And of course, for all the trouble that I've taken, of course it's not the trouble, but it is the joy of the work I had. But the best joy, the highest joy I had when my Amma telephoned me and she said, Anand, I've seen this wonderful work that you have done. And today I can say, I can give you one blessing. I said, yes, Amma, tell me that. She said, today I can say proudly that Tandril Nichina Kodu Evaranuntenuya. So one who has exceeded, a son who has exceeded his father, that's you. And I said, Amma, that's the greatest blessings that I can ever get. And that's the greatest reward for all the work that I so passionately did for my father. And now I would request Shruti, who has given the foreword in each of his books, who has gone through all the articles, to give us a little bit of her impression, what she got when she was doing these books. Shruti.
Thank you, sir. It is certainly, it has been a privilege to be able to read, even I work on it, but to be able to read Professor Madhusudan Reddy's book, and in our common language we would always call, because he used to call him Bapu, so it came like, I would also say Bapu's books. So it was certainly a privilege And I didn't understand initially 1 year back when sir told me, I just went to him saying, sir, I want to work something with Sakar. So he said, okay, take this up and go through all the books and enlist them, then I will see. Until this January, the work started last January, but until this January I never realized the import and the importance of the work that my teacher and guide was getting done from me. I had absolutely no idea of, he told me it's a collected work which will come out, but I never understood the magnanimity, the volume of the books that would be, the work that would be required. But slowly, very, I would say, cleverly he guided me into it, and he said, okay, now go through this book, that book, and he taught me proofreading, he taught me editing. We have done some editing, we've shortened a few pages of Bapu's books if they were required. So all that he taught me, and at the end of when the proofreading was ready, he said, I don't have time to write the introduction, now you write. I thought, okay, I'll write it, he will correct it, and it will go in his name. But again a surprise, and he said, now I'll put your name. I felt really very small because I am nobody to, except for reading Bapu's books, I could not have done anything. But he gave me the honor to come into the book's name somewhere and to become a part of the Reddy family, I would say, the VM Reddy lineage in some way. So I feel extremely blessed and grateful that I got this chance. I thank Dr. Reddy for, thinking that I was eligible to do that, and I'm really, really grateful to him. Now about Bapu's books, I have learned a lot. 1 year, it was really, I wouldn't say sadhana, but a lot of inwardization took place. I became quieter, I became more thoughtful. The clarity of thought that his articles, his research papers, his books have given me is tremendous. I mean, from the vocabulary to the language to the construction to understanding the thought of Sri Aurobindo and the mother very simply, an idea which is large. If we say what is the definition of culture, we can debate on it for 10 days. But Professor Reddy has done it so simply over maybe 100 pages, 200 pages. And it is simple. I mean, culture, hundreds of books have been written on culture, and yet we don't know what culture is. And he has done that very beautifully, simply, and making us understand what exactly is. He has beautifully connected the atom to the Parabrahman, the Anu to the Paramanu. It's very simply done. So I urge everyone to read these books because they give us a lot of clarity. They are very simple in language, yet very literary, very idiomatic, very beautiful. So for the clarity of thought, of course, as Sir said initially, it's difficult to read Sri Aurobindo. Sometimes for the long sentences that Sri Aurobindo has written in the Light Divine, a paragraph of a sentence or 1 page of a sentence, which is difficult to break. So Professor Reddy has simplified those things, and I learned a lot. The clarity, in fact, it would be a meditation to read that much, and not once. Sir made me go through it a couple of times. He said, this is not done well, do it again. So had to do the proofreading a couple of times. But it was a wonderful experience. Absolutely, we did it almost morning 4 o'clock because I was working in a university that time. So it wasn't possible to do anything during those 8 hours. So beyond those hours, I had to sit down and do, but not a single day I would say did I get tired doing it. Because one mantra that Sir taught me was, it is an offering to the mother and nothing less than perfection can go to her. So there was no choice, there was no, we could not have left it imperfect even in a word. So I'm really, really grateful, and I really enjoyed this meditation, this satsang with the books that I had. And I really wish we could bring out more if Bapu had written more, and maybe the remaining works can be brought out later. But it's really beautiful. The cover, of course, the entire cover design is his. The title he has chosen. He is a master in giving titles, and he says his father has been very fond of titles. So he and even Chalanti they have it in their genes. So they have been coming up with great titles. We brooded over them, and The cover pages, the covers that you see, they are absolutely inspired. Sir said he would just sit on the computer and something would emerge. The color combination, the photographs, with the theme and everything. So once the title is decided, it would just emerge. So they are wonderful, they are attractive. Mama also said the covers are very attractive and beautiful. So at least for the sake of cover, we like children, we pick up the books which are very attractive in color and covers. So for that sake, I think we can read it. So again, a lot of thanks, gratefulness to Bapu, to the entire IHS team, and especially to Dr. Anand Reddy for giving me this opportunity to work on this books. Thank you. Yeah, the books are available for sale here. You can look it up in the tea time. We have copies of all the 5. Bought together, all 5 of them have 20% discount, and single book has 10% discount. So I hope you make use of the opportunity. Thank you. Now moving on to the journal release. I request Professor T. Ramakrishna to release 2 of the journals in Telugu. One is a booklet, Bhavani Bharti, and the other is Nutan Deepalu.
Bhavani Bharti, but that Bhagavad will tell you the details.
Nutana Deepal.
I request Sri Raghav to tell us about the books, please.
తెలుగు పుస్తకాలు కాబట్టి తెలుగులో మాట్లాడతాను. అందరికీ నమస్కారం. భవానీ భారతి అన్నది సెప్టెంబర్ 2006 అఖిలలో ప్రచురించబడింది. దీంట్లో 99 సంస్కృత శ్లోకాలు ఉన్నాయి, శ్రీ అరవిందో రాసినవి. 1905 to 1908 ప్రాంతంలో రాశారు. దీంట్లో ఇది ఎందుకు మళ్ళీ నేను చేయాల్సి వచ్చింది అని అంటే, మన స్వాతంత్ర సమర సమయం లోపల జనం ఎలా ఉన్నారు, కొందరు మాత్రమే పాల్గొని కొందరు మాత్రమే స్వతంత్రం కోరుతున్నారు, కొందరు దాన్ని అటువంటి సిచ్యువేషన్ తమ లాభం కొరకు వాడుకున్నారు, ఒక తామసం కూడా కనిపించింది అన్నట్టుగా వారు ఫీల్ చేసి మొదటి కొన్ని శ్లోకాలలో వివిధ వర్ణాల వాళ్ళు ఎలాగా వేసేది భారత మాత గురించి ఆలోచించకుండా ఉన్నారు అన్నది, తర్వాత శ్లోకాలలో వాళ్ళని ఎలా రేకెత్తించి స్వాతంత్రం తీసుకొచ్చుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం ఉన్నది అనేటువంటి విషయాలను చెప్తూ రాశారు. అయితే 100 చేయలేదు శ్రీ అరవిందో వారు. 100 చేస్తే శతకం అయ్యేది, అందుకొరకు 99 దగ్గర ఆగినట్టున్నారు. దాన్ని మళ్ళీ యువతకు ఈ విషయాలను అందజేసి వాళ్ళలో భారత మాతకు గురించి గౌరవం, ప్రేమ పెంచే అవసరం ఉన్నదన్నట్టుగా అనిపించి దీన్ని మళ్ళీ వేస్తున్నాము. సో ఇది అమూల్యం, ఇప్పుడు అందరికీ ఇవ్వబడుతుంది, ఇక్కడ ఉన్న వాళ్ళందరికీ. తర్వాత ఈ నూతన దీపాలు అన్నది మొదటి నుంచి మనకు ఒక అలవాటు ఉంది. ఒక గ్రంథం వస్తే దానికి వ్యాఖ్యానం తప్పకుండా వస్తుంది. ఒకటి కాదు, చాలా వస్తుంటాయి. వేదాల మీద, ఉపనిషత్తుల మీద, భారతం, మహాభారతం, రామాయణం అన్నింటి మీద వస్తుంది. అలాగే ఇవాళ చదువులలో గైడు ఈ ప్రకారంగా లాస్ట్లో వచ్చి మరి ఎంత క్లుప్తంగా తయారవుతున్నాయో తెలియదు. అయితే ఇప్పుడు అన్నారు కదా శ్రీ అరవిందోలో చదువు అండర్స్టాండ్ చేసుకోవడం, అర్థం చేసుకోవడం కష్టమని. దాని మూలంగా చాలామంది శ్రీ అరవిందో తత్వం గురించి, యోగం గురించి వ్యాఖ్యానాలు రాస్తూ వచ్చారు. ప్రొఫెసర్ మధుసూదన్ రెడ్డి గారు 27 పుస్తకాలు రాశారు శ్రీ అరవిందో తత్వం మరియు యోగా గురించి. దాంట్లో నుంచి ఇంగ్లీష్లో ఆనంద్ రెడ్డి కొన్ని సెలెక్టెడ్ వర్క్స్ మళ్ళీ ప్రింట్ చేశారు. వాటిని అంటే కొన్ని ఒక దగ్గర తీసుకొచ్చి థీమ్ని బట్టి దీంట్లో ఏం చేశామంటే కొన్నింటిని తెలుగులోకి చేసి ఎక్కువ తెలుగు వారికి శ్రీ అరవిందో తత్వమును యోగాను ప్రొఫెసర్ మధుసూదన్ రెడ్డి గారు వ్రాసిన వ్యాఖ్యానాల ద్వారా వాటిని తెరిగించి అందజేయాలనే అభిలాషతోటి దీన్ని చేశాం. ఈ నెల మధుసూదన్ రెడ్డి గారి జన్మదిన నెల, అందుకొరకు ఈ నెలలో ఈ నూతన దీపాలు మొదటి సంచికలో మొదటి ప్రతిగా దీన్ని వెలువరిస్తున్నాము. ఇది కూడా అమూల్యమే. తర్వాత ఏమైనా మూల్యం పెడతామో ఏమో తెలియదు. ప్రస్తుతానికి మాత్రం ఇది ద్వివార్షిక సంవత్సరానికి 2 వేస్తాము, జూలై డిసెంబర్లో. దాంట్లో ముఖ్యంగా ప్రొఫెసర్ మధుసూదన్ రెడ్డి గారి వ్యాసాలను తెలుగులోకి అనువదించి కొన్ని మాతా వాక్కులు, శ్రీ అరవిందో వాక్కులు కూడా దాంట్లో వేసి ప్రచురిస్తాము. చాలా క్లుప్తంగా దీని గురించి చెప్పాను. ఇప్పుడు ప్రొఫెసర్ టి రామకృష్ణ గారిని సడన్గా మేము పిలిచాం, వారికి ఇద్దరు చెప్పలేదు వీటిని ఆవిష్కరించాలని. ఎందుకంటే నిన్ననే నాకు చూశాను, వారు సావిత్రి 24,000 లైన్లను ఒక్క లైన్ కూడా వదలకుండా అన్నింటినీ ట్రాన్స్లేట్ చేశారు తెలుగులోకి. అది చాలా ప్రీవర్ స్థాయి దానిలో చేశారు. అది చూసిన తర్వాత ఈ పుస్తకాన్ని వీటిని రిలీజ్ చేయడానికి వారు ఇక్కడ ఉన్నారు కాబట్టి వారే అర్హులు అనుకునే అటువంటి అభిప్రాయంతో ఆఖరి క్షణాన పిలవడం జరిగింది. క్షమించాలి మొదలు చెప్పనందుకు. మళ్ళీ మీరు అంటే టైం లేదు ఎక్కువ కాబట్టి ఒక 2 నిమిషాలు మాత్రం మా ఈ కృషి మీద మీ అభిప్రాయం చెప్పాలని కోరుతున్నాను.
మిత్రులారా, రాఘవ్ గారు తెలుగులో మాట్లాడారు కాబట్టి నేను కూడా తెలుగులోనే మాట్లాడతాను. తెలుగు అర్థం కాని వాళ్ళ కోసం నా మిత్రులు మకరంద్ పరంజపయ్య గారు ఉన్నారు ఇక్కడ, వారి కోసం ఒక్క నిమిషం ఇంగ్లీష్లో మాట్లాడతాను. ఈ భవానీ భారతి అనగానే నాకు గుర్తువచ్చిన విషయం శ్రీ రామకృష్ణ పరమహంస గారు అంటుండేవారు, మందిర్ గడో అంటే భవానీ మందిరం కట్టండి అని వాక్యం ద్వారా ఆయన చెప్తే దాన్ని అర్థం చేసుకున్న శిష్యులు యుద్ధం సాగించండిరా మీ స్వాతంత్రం కోసం అని అర్థం చేసుకున్నారు. అది ఎవరికి తెలియదు, కానీ రహస్యం అది. కాబట్టి భవానీ అంటే మనకు చాలా విషయాలు గుర్తుకొస్తాయి చరిత్రలో. సరే, భవానీని కొలవడానికి నూతన దీపాలు ఎంతైనా అవసరం కదా. సో భవానీ భారతితో పాటు నూతన దీపాలు కూడా వేయడం చాలా సమంజసంగా ఉందని నేను భావిస్తూ ఉన్నాను. వారికి అభినందనలు కూడా తెలుపుకుంటున్నాను. I am so happy that even though it was sudden, I think that the divine blessings come suddenly. I think it's the blessing that I am receiving from Savitri, none other than Savitri. Because after I did the translation of Savitri, I tell you very honestly that my mind has been usurped by a certain amount of inactivity, inertness. But I tell you, I assure you that it is a positive inertness. There is nothing left beyond Savitri. If you understand and assimilate what Sri Aurobindo has expressed in those 24,000 lines as Sri Raghuram was mentioning, there is nothing left for you to be known. As Mudakopanishad tells you, what is it that when you know, you need not know anything else? The ultimate knowledge. You have been given this ultimate knowledge. Everything else is insipid now. In fact, one of my friends in Bangalore keeps telling me this. He is 85-year-old. He knows Savitri by heart. Many chapters and chapter and verse. So believe me when I say, because I have read the line after line after line, And I took 16 months to work on that. I didn't know work as a matter of fact because when I read one line, I was convinced that when I say the same thing in Telugu, it would sound much, much sweeter. English has got its own majesty. I compare the March of Army on the Republic Day, that is the English version, and the cultural troops which follow, that is my Telugu version. Both can be enjoyed. What more could I say? I am so happy that I joined this family of Dr. Madhusudan Reddy Garu. In fact, when I worked in Kerala, Calicut University for 22 long years, I used to be asked, do you know Madhusudan Reddy? That is two of them. One was Professor of English who used to organize some meetings on Sri Aurobindo, and the other is the very much respected Parameshwaran, the BJP leader who is also in charge of Vivekananda Kendra. He used to inquire about Sri Madhusudan Reddy only because I am from Andhra Pradesh. And I used to be embarrassed that, yes, I have heard of him, but I have not read any of his books, except that I know that Chicago University has honored him with a chair, and he continued to work there for a very, very long time. And these are my experiences and acquaintance with Sri Aurobindo. And I have never touched Savitri until after my retirement. Accidentally, I will tell you later about that. I must tell you. When I read the very first line, I thought in Telugu it will sound much, much sweeter. So I went on writing line after line after line. For 16 months, no day passed without my doing work on it because I was possessed by Savitri. The night I used to think, what happens later? What happens later? As soon as I get up, I will see the text. And I also assure you one thing, because I should not be vainglorious. The Savitri translation can be attempted only in this computer age. Otherwise it is not possible. I was having the whole text on the monitor, and if I did not know any word, I used to get the meaning and the complete story from the computer immediately. For example, Prometheus. What is the story behind the Prometheus? I read immediately, and I know. So I knew what I was writing in Telugu. And nobody can do that. Because I am a scientist, I had to use the instrument computer, and I had known everything. And I told my publisher, because I am a scientist, I could do that. Because he was surprised. So I don't blame that no translations are available, because it's humanly impossible to translate Savitri unless you have the computer, because you cannot consult so many encyclopedias and dictionaries. And I used to tell that you will get tennis elbow if you do that, if you attempt that. So it's not my ability, but the ability of the instrument. It's also part of the evolution. I think I will have occasion to elaborate on this later. For the time being, I congratulate Sri Raghava and the entire family of this institute for bringing out these wonderful books in Telugu. And I like speaking in Telugu. I have no chance of speaking because I live in Bangalore. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
ట్రాన్స్లేషన్లో తర్జుమా చేసిన వారు ఇద్దరు ఇక్కడ ఉన్నారు. వారిని చిరు కానుకతో మేము మా కృతజ్ఞతాభివందనములు తెలుపుకోదలుచుకున్నాము. కేవీ రావు గారు, ప్లీజ్ కామ్. మీరు అఖిలాలో ట్రాన్స్లేట్ చేస్తున్నారు, కానీ 2 గ్రంథాలు సావిత్రి మీద వచనములో 2 భాగాలుగా రాశారు. రెండో వారు డాక్టర్ ప్రసన్న కృష్ణ. వారు కూడా చాలా రోజుల నుండి మా ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్కు సాయం చేస్తున్నారు. అఖిలలో వీరి ట్రాన్స్లేషన్స్ రెగ్యులర్గా వస్తుంటాయి. సో వీరు కూడా మాకు రెగ్యులర్గా ట్రాన్స్లేట్ చేస్తున్నారు. వారిని కూడా అనుకోండి. సెలవు.
Thank you. Now that we take a break. Now, I think the registrar. Okay, the registrar of Osmania University, by any chance, if he's here, we had invited him. So we had a wonderful session, the first morning session, and to begin with the next academic session where our eminent speakers will be sharing their views with us. Before that, we take a half an hour tea break and reassemble here by 11:25. And the books are there for sale. Please take a look. Thank you. The next hall is the tea hall. So we'll have to walk down till there and have our tea. Thank you.
By the time we introduce another
We begin with the first academic session now. I request Professor Sitaram Reddy to please take the seat and chair the session for this first session. I request the speakers, Professor Sachidanand Mohanty and Professor K. Purushottam Reddy, to come on the dais. We have exactly 45 minutes for every speaker, and although I know the speakers are, we have great speakers here and they would be sharing a lot of things with us, and yet unfortunately we will have to request them to maintain the time so that the entire event goes on time. So 45 minutes. If need be, I will also facilitate everyone with a reminder required. So the first speaker today is Professor Sachidanand Mohanty. He was the former head of the Department of English, University of Hyderabad, and had his earlier education in Sri Aurobindo International School Center of Education in Pondicherry. After completing his master's and PhD in the University of Hyderabad, he joined the Department of English in the same university, and with his innate talent and flair for critical writing, he rose to become the head of the Department of English. His gift for writing and his critical acumen got translated in his innumerable essays and 21 books in English and in Oriya. Out of the several acclaimed books, a few notable ones are Understanding Cultural Exchange, 1997, A Lost Tradition, and Sri Aurobindo, A Contemporary Leader. His versatility was soon recognized by leading journals and forums in the country, including India Today, The Hindu, The Indian Express, and The New Quest. He is the recipient of several national and international awards, including those from the British Council, the Salzburg, the Katha, and the Fulbright. In spite of his busy academic works, Professor Mohanty has been in the Board of Management of the Institute of Human Study and contributed much in its academic programs. We are all looking forward to listen to his talk on Sri Aurobindo and the challenges of contemporary world. Sir?
Good morning. I'd like to begin by thanking Shriti and Board of Management, Anand Bhai, Dipshika Di, Radha Aunty, Chalamai, and we are extremely lucky to have in our midst well-wishers, respected academics like my friend Makran, and very close friends like Kim, and members of the Institute of Human Study like Raghav. It is normally customary for teachers to speak, and if they are worth the salt, the drop of a hat, they should be able to hold forth on any topic. But today, as a mark of respect to all of you, I'm going to present a written text. I do hope that within the 45 minutes that has been given to me, I will depart now and then to make a point. But there is a line of argument that I want to follow here. As days pass, we find a widening gap between the town and the gown, the university and the mainstream society that Anand Bhai referred to earlier. I think it is extremely regressive. It is worse than the two cultures debate that involved C.P. Snow and A.F.R. Lewis, when they talked about the widening gap between the sciences and the humanities. Today, unfortunately and regrettably, there is a widening, ever-widening gap between the intellectual class and the ordinary citizenry. And I think the notion of the public intellectual is dying out fast. I would like to signal that if we were to move in the direction that Sri Aurobindo had in mind, and Sri Aurobindo stood, of course, as a poet, as a humanist, as a nationalist, and as a cultural theorist. But to my mind, and we have another paper coming up by Mathuran, he will agree with me, and others do, when I say that above all, Sri Aurobindo was a futurist. He has all these qualities in him, and you can try and pigeonhole him in different disciplines, for example. And for the sake of convenience, we do that, because for our own understanding, we know that knowledge is one, it is indivisible, and yet for the sake of our own convenience, we have parceled it out into different compartments. Sri Aurobindo refuses to be put into any kind of a pigeonhole. He stands for knowledge in totality, although he is devoting his own attention and skill in excellence in any of the fields that he has taken. It is only possible if somebody has a futuristic vision, which is integrated. One word that we have in mind regarding Sri Aurobindo is integration, integral. It is not segmental, it is not partial. So what I am going to do, as you can see that I have already departed from the written text, what I am going to do is to highlight, not in the manner of a mega project, because mega projects are not worthwhile. I am going to take up a single issue, which is at the forefront of all the attention of all of us today. And I am very happy. I would have been happier if the students were there, because 1/3 of our India's population happen to be young. But are we listening to them? Are we speaking to them? But the second best thing is happening. We have the educators. And what can be better than sharing? I won't say educating the educators. I don't have that kind of a temerity and that kind of an arrogance. What I have in mind is that the idea of sharing some of the thoughts that I have with regard to one of the most vexing problems of today. And I dare say that it is part of a larger work that I have been carrying out. And this is likely to be published by Routledge India in the month of October or November. So it's not a rehash. It's not something which I have done. And I'm extremely privileged because this whole gathering has been organized to pay our tribute on an extraordinary soul. In my life, I have seen a number of people of this kind. And I would like to publicly acknowledge the memory of somebody called Professor Madhusudan Reddy, about whom much will be spoken tomorrow in the personal sense. I have not been listed, but I do hope that I will be given an opportunity to share my thoughts about what I think about him and why it is that outstanding individuals are so important. We use the term almost like a cliche, inspirational. But what does inspired and what does inspirational mean to us? What does it mean when we say that we are deeply moved by the individuals? Because unless we have this kind of an inspiration, no worthwhile things can ever take place. So for my purpose, I'm going to look at one issue that is in the forefront of everybody's attention today. And that is called cosmopolitanism, globalization, internationalization. I mean, much before these words became buzzwords in the academia and the mainstream society, there was Professor Reddy who had this kind of international vision. So as it were, it has been really diminished because it's the thoughtless and indiscriminatory manner in which the word is being used, international. What does internationalism mean? What does globalization mean? What does the notion of the global modern mean? I'm going to suggest that in the Western academia, there is a kind of a dead end people have reached. And I think it should be possible for somebody like me to try to be simple and not hopefully simplistic. I think it is an arrogance of the certain kind that many academics have got, that they can only speak to their own fellow beings, for example, and the rest of the people, they're ordinary Jones, and they will not be able to understand. I believe that it is a paucity, it is an utter inadequacy on the claim of the academic to say that they will not be able to address the mainstream audience. So I do hope that some of these issues, some of the theoretical issues, which pertain to this whole idea of cosmopolitanism, globalization, and global modern, which is being debated in some of the leading and avant-garde academia, universities of the metropolitan West, I should be able to communicate some of these issues to you. And at the end of it, hopefully, there will be a certain amount of illumination regarding the answers that we can find. And above all, I do feel, because if you educate one educator, hundreds and thousands of children are benefited. So this is a little gift that I would like to give, because I have been benefited, I have learned something about this by virtue of my being immersed in this kind of field. Sri Aurobindo, of course, we know that he talked about the great crisis that is taking place, the evolutionary crisis. I will skip this because we all know about what he's doing. We have the benefit of being an audience which is somehow informed by Sri Aurobindo's thought. And yet there is also a challenge, because if you are already informed, there is a certain amount of what we call the received wisdom. We think that we know, and yet, as it is being said, again and again, we have to rediscover. We have to reinvent ourselves, and we are dealing and grappling with a book. Life Divine tells us that mankind is undergoing an evolutionary crisis. And man has reached, and remember when he said that, and before 1950, 49 or so, Life Divine, and he says that man has created a kind of a system over which he has no control. And if you look around what he said, because Cold War had begun, and the two power blocks were at loggerheads with each other, and each claiming that they can, destroy the world 10 times, 20 times over. And Sri Aurobindo was cautioning us, and just few days back you saw the civil airliner, for example, and 290 passengers, no fault of theirs, they were shot and blasted out of the sky, full of fault. And yet nobody is claiming any kind of credit for this kind of thing. And yet what is happening all around us, you can see that mayhem and blood, and this note of cynicism that Anand Bhai was giving voice to. And we are not here to celebrate cynicism, but we are here to see in what direction we can go. So if you see, finding modern education is telling, the second part I want to suggest here. Again, I am departing from the text. What is the answer that is given? The answer which is given is by reason and rationality. And the answer is that if you look at all sides of the opinion, for example, you will have a kind of a balanced point of view. Now this idea of a balanced point of view, which is the result of a rational inquiry, typified best and characteristically by people like Bertrand Russell, for example. It is part of a citizen culture now. If you engage in a kind of a dialogue, and a spirited dialogue, and if you begin to listen to somebody else's point of view, then you would ideally come to something called the middle path. And that is obviously what Buddha had taught, the middle path. Now we can quite clearly see that if you go back to the European Enlightenment, that talked about rationality, universality and progress. These were the watchwords of the European Enlightenment. If that is the kind of a direction and ideology that we were supposed to follow, for example, why is it that it has really not led to any kind of a positive outcome? It should have led to, because if you think that you can listen to the other man's point of view in a balanced and harmonious manner, then together we can explore and we come to some kind of an answer. So clearly, reason and rationality that we have really believed in. In other words, what it has led to is the colonial empire. It is to the primacy of the West. We know what is best. I want to really give a reference to Charles Grant. Charles Grant, who was in the employment of the East India Company. And if you look at the Parliament papers, for example, and incidentally, I believe that the history of the East India Company, its cultural, economic, and political dimension should become part of our own canonical study, but it isn't. Charles Grant said, memorably, he said that we're going to really conquer this country, not because of the access to superior kind of armaments and resources and military resources, but provided we can show that we are morally superior to those we are governing. That is the claim that he made, that we are morally superior. And if you look at the discourse today of the West that is coming to us, and practically everything that we do today almost seems to be in a worse form, in a multiplied form of the kind of subjugation that Sri Aurobindo and the others have spoken about. So how is that the cultural imperialism of the West that is being foisted on us in such a vicious and pernicious and gross manner, and there is no effect, no effort also to withstand this kind of a thing, because the colonized today believe on the basis of a manufactured concern that what is happening to us is for our own good itself. So as I said, the first part of my own presentation, and I am completely skipping the text because I think it's important to have eye contact with you and to be able to speak. So that's the first part of the diagnosis. I don't think that it should be time to tell, because all of us know about what really ails our own civilization. So rationality and reason are not going to be the answer. And when Sri Aurobindo said in the human cycle memorably, he said office and limitation of reason. And he said reason as the governor of life. 2 essays I would recommend to the teachers to read. He was not really ringing the death bell of reason and rationality. He was not saying that reason and rationality are wrong and should be thrown out of the window. He was not saying that. He was only saying it has a certain kind of a rule and it has a certain rationale. If you do that, then I think we will benefit. Typically, for example, how to govern, the ability to organize, the ability to synthesize, to analyze, for example. But if it goes beyond that, then obviously there is a kind of an aberration. This is one truth that Sri Aurobindo is voicing again and again. He is not against anybody. He doesn't have a negative agenda at all. And this is something which I have rarely seen with any of the thinkers that we have seen. And certainly not in the current kind of a scenario, that we are against this. If you talk to students, for example, we are teaching them to stand up in the class. Excuse me, I have a problem with that. We are not even teaching them the value of dialogue. So when our student friends, teacher friends are here, I think I would appeal to them, going back to what I was saying, how to nurture, how to sustain the spirit of dialogue. And I think Sri Aurobindo gives us the answer. So when he talked about the evolutionary crisis, when he was really talking, remember that he was a product of that same colonial West. But he did not become a lackey. He did not become a camp follower. He decided how to engage with the West. We must have a dialogue. We must not be a nativist, opposing all that the West is giving us, but how to have a self-respect, how to build this self-esteem, and how to have this dialogue, continuous dialogue with the West. So reason is not going to be the answer. Rationality is not going to be the answer. What is going to be the answer? 2 things are now taking place. And again, I will skip my paper and I will say that in the West, for example, there are 2 ideas which have been spoken of. One is a great theorist in Chicago University. His name is Sheldon Pollock, who is not known by the mainstream audience. And he is talking about 2 different kinds of cosmopolitanism that have taken place in the West. And 2, one is governed by languages. He's talking about Latin-based cosmopolitanism and Sanskrit-based cosmopolitanism. And his claim is that Latin-based cosmopolitanism was a domineering one because it effaced all the differences that is very colonized. And he says that Sanskrit was a more benign and acceptable one. And it appeals to us because Sanskrit is our own language. But if you look closely also, you can see that in the foothold of Sanskrit, many languages have also perished. Many cultures have also perished. As it went from India to Sri Lanka, to Myanmar, to Tibet, to the Far East, for example. So by giving a clean sheet to Sanskrit, I am sure that he was not doing enough service to his own thinking itself. So those are the examples. But today we have the example of the global model, globalization. If you look at the schools, for example, every school wants to outdo the others to be more international, to be more cosmopolitan, to be more global, for example. There was a time that people in India talked about the exchanges, educational and cultural exchanges. Today, the elite of our country is won over to idea that cultural exchange is not going to be the answer. What is going to be the answer? We must have the campuses of the leading Western universities. And I'm telling all of you, because it has become 99 out of 100, it has become an article for faith. In major universities, in major colleges, in major schools of our own country. Because we are governed, as I said, by that colonial empire that is bombarding messages at us in an insidious and in a perverse manner, whereby we feel that it is necessary for our own welfare. I'm cautioning you. Sri Aurobindo had cautioned. There are two thinkers who are really cautioning us about this. And in my book, I've tried to retrieve, on the basis of the narratives which are lost, there is a kind of an amnesia, forgetfulness, which disconnects us from our own past itself. To look at the past, Sri Aurobindo said, is not to be a revivalist, but past can become a foundation for moving forward. As T.S. Eliot said, not the pastness of his past, but his presence, for example. Past, he said, is not a lump or a bolus, but how does the past speak to us? Do you have this whole kind of intellectual training, whereby we are establishing connection with the past? We don't do that. I am suggesting that in our own effort to try to retrieve, we can indeed find answers to some of the vexing problems. As I said, globalization has become a buzzword. Global modern has become a buzzword. Educational exchange has been tossed out of the window. Starting universities in India of the foreign universities counterpart has become the accepted norm itself. This is not the direction in which it should go. Why is it not the direction? There are consequences of this act, both in the theoretical sphere, but more practical in the existential. Because if you were just concerned about theory, majority of our own people would not be interested. It is an academic exercise with a certain degree of intellectual excellence. But beyond that, does it speak to the citizens? I think it does to speak to the citizens. Why is it? The dominant model of globalization which is in currency today talks about two things. One, mark my word, the local has to increasingly give way to the global. The local, the half sari has to be given up for the jeans, for example. It is the dominant cultural industry of the West that is going to determine your own sartorial habits, your life values, your cosmetics, indeed everything itself. When old-timers are concerned about the loss of the Indian values, they probably speak in a sentimental manner. But there is a more complicated, more mature and pernicious manner in which industry, being from the West, for example, is controlling our own lifestyle. So the global has to dominate, the local has to give. Second thing, very important implication of the global model, which I think will be challenged in the last part of my presentation, and then I'll be done for today. The second thing is that just as the local has to give way for the global, the second one is that the tradition has to give way for the modern, for example. If you want to be modern, you have to give up tradition. You can't wear half sari and try to be a modern. You have to really give up the entire baggage of our own tradition itself. Look at the way, for example, it flies in the free space of the reality itself. The reality is that we have a hybrid existence. The reality is that we have multiple selves. The reality is not that I am this and that, but we have more than that itself. And the reality is the addition of all the parts, fragmented parts, do not necessarily constitute the whole, for example. That's not the reality. And yet, what is it that we are doing? Because we are being governed by the notion of the global model, is to give up the tradition for the sake of the model, to give up the local for the sake of the global itself. There are two persons who, to my mind, are giving the answers, and I have tried to attend to. One is Rabindranath Tagore, the second was Sri Aurobindo. In Sadharan Samaj, Rabindranath is saying, look at the interesting and extraordinary manner in which Rabindranath Tagore is saying. He's saying, and he goes completely contrary to the claims of the global modern today. He says that I can understand the world cultures, I can understand the world literatures if I can understand mine, if I can understand Bengali. Look at this. This is completely contradiction to the dominant paradigms today. When I'm saying that we have to give up, Sheldon Pollock, whom I referred, for example, he was lamenting Today in the major universities of the world, there is a dearth of people who are specialists in the classical languages like Sanskrit. And we are trying to celebrate, for example. Why is it so? Because it's dying out. Languages are dying out. As we are speaking, for example, certain languages are dead. In Andaman and Nicobar and other places also, languages are dead. And linguists are telling us the death of a language heralds the death knell of an entire culture. Because language is not a linguistic thing alone. Language comes with culture. And when you allow or contribute or abet to the end of a language, we are killing cultures, for example. So United Nations says that biospecies are important in themselves. Languages are important in themselves. Because human beings, if they don't celebrate diversity of languages and cultures, then what is the human beings meant for? That's ultimately for the human welfare. So Tagore is saying that, I have the right to think of the sovereignty of reason with R capital. And when he was talking about the sovereignty of reason, my friends, he was coming very close to Sri Aurobindonian idea of spirituality. Because it is not that reason that divides, that is divisive, that is segmental. It is that reason which encompasses, which is integral. So he says, I must learn Bengali. If I want to know about Barcelona and Los Angeles, I have to know Bengali. If I know Bengali, I can understand English and American. But today, destroy Telugu, destroy Korea, kill the languages, kill the cultures if you want to be global. And Sri Aurobindo says this very beautifully. Read Ideal of Humanity. I refer to human cycle. Read Humanity. As I said, I am very impressed by all that Sri Aurobindo said in different branches of learning. But I think from the existential point of view, it's very important to look at Sri Aurobindo in a total context, for example, in an integral whole. And Sri Aurobindo towards the end, and I will quote that paragraph and be done with my presentation today. I begin by saying that there is a crisis of the culture today, and I said I'm going to talk about Sri Aurobindo as a futurist. And I think it is important to posit the importance of a thinker. If you can suggest that he is relevant to our own need. And friends, I suggested, one of the greatest challenges that we have today is with regard to preservation of culture and the kinds of dominant paradigms that are circulating in our own context. And I suggested that this dominance is from the West. And it goes before the time of Sri Aurobindo. I refer to people like Charles Grant, who talked about the civilizing mission of Europe. But the kinds of the civilizing mission of Europe that Charles Grant and Macaulay and Trevelyan and others had spoken about, that is nothing. It turns into insignificant compared to the present kind of the paradigms that are being bombarded to us from the metropolitan West. What does Sri Aurobindo say? You've heard about Tagore. Tagore who gives the answer. No conflict between the local and the global. No conflict between tradition and modernity. Sri Aurobindo says that diversity is possible. Diversity is important because without diversity, you have uniformity. Human beings need diversity. There is one book, my friends, you should read, and that book is War and Self-Determination. In the entire corpus of Sri Aurobindo's writing, this is a small book, and people think that it is only talking about the end of the First World War. But it has seeds which are really relevant to some of the most progressive and finest thinking of today. Talking about self-determination, because we have the exponents of the human rights today, and self-determination, Sri Aurobindo talks about, and he says, every child, every human being, every inanimate and animate object, he is also talking about inanimate objects, every unit of our own creation has the right for its own growth, that we call in our own system, the Swadharma and Swadharma. If you deny that, and he says in the patriarchal order, the child was considered to be a product of the father, the parent. And the parent had the temerity and the arrogance, he says, the choice of the words of Sri, to design it, to chisel it, to mold it to any kind of a matter. Didn't want to be an IAS officer, I want to make my child an IAS officer. He says it's a great injustice. It's a great violence you are inflicting on the child. And he says that we must have the freedom of growth that every child needs. And he says, if that is true, then the local must also be given the same freedom. The global must be having the same freedom. And we must have the right for multiple allegiances. It is by doing so that, we can have a progressive, balanced, and futuristic society.